what happened with Manrega was that women got economic independence.
Yes.
When they got economic independence, they had more of a say in household decisions. That gave them more confidence. They started becoming a part of decision-making processes, and that gave them the power to come out and vote and decide on whom they want to vote for.
In Delhi especially, the Kejriwal launched schemes of 2,000 rupees per month. There also questions were being raised that there is a limit up to which you can do this. You have to empower people eventually so that they can.
लेकिन ये देखिए, ये हम जब गरीबों के लिए होता है तभी क्यों सवाल करते हैं? जब मिडिल क्लास को तो हमेशा पेट्रोल पे सब्सिडी चाहिए, डीजल पे सब्सिडी चाहिए.
So that in a way society is
मुझे हमेशा ये लगता है कि भाई गरीबों के लिए कुछ होता है तो इसको हमेशा देखते हैं कि तो फ्रीबी हो गई है, ये तो डोल दे रहे हैं, we are just giving them doles, we are just giving them freebies. But when it comes to the others, you want tax concessions, you want tax cuts. The rich want tax cuts. They don't want this to be taxed, that to be taxed. But when it comes to the poor, just because you see it tangibly being given, you suddenly start feeling this is fiscally not prudent.
Not prudent.
They don't even have basics like toilets at home. Like, it's unfortunate that a woman has to vote thinking that, oh God, now I've got a toilet, so I must reward this party for giving me a toilet. Unfortunate that even today that's a conversation, but it is what it is. That's what's happening. That's the ground reality. अगर उज्ज्वला की मदद से एक महिला के पास टाइम बचता है, एनर्जी बचती है, सेहत ठीक रहती है, तो वो मनरेगा में काम कर सकती है, अपना पैसा कमा सकती है, या फिर वो अपने जो कैश ट्रांसफर आ रहा है उससे कुछ छोटा मोटा अपना बिजनेस स्टार्ट कर सकती है, पैसे कमा सकती है. अगर महिला के पास टॉयलेट है तो वो सुरक्षित महसूस कर सकती है. सो द नेक्स्ट वन बिग थिंग दैट पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज विल हैव टू प्रोवाइड फॉर एंड विल हैव टू सॉल्व फॉर इज एम्प्लॉयमेंट, क्योंकि हर महिला का ये रहता है कि रोजगार, आप रोजगार दो.
Hello and welcome once again to Kitabi Baatein, a podcast where we make sense of India and the world through the medium of books. My guest today is journalist Ruhi Tiwari, who has written this very special book on India's women and about their voting patterns, their voting choices, and how they see themselves when they vote and what are their aspirations. Ruhi is a senior journalist with over 20 years of experience and has worked with several important media houses. Ruhi, welcome to Kitabi Baatein.
Thank you so much for having me.
You have written an important book because I think while elections are an important or a favorite topic of everyone, but very few authors or journalists have tried to capture what women think or what women want, as is the title of your book. How important they are as a voter, what are their aspirations. I think it's one of a kind of a book. So what's your inspiration behind writing this book?
Hi. So, I've been covering elections for almost 20 years now, and I mentioned it in my book in the author's note as well. I have seen the landscape of the voter evolve, specifically the woman voter, right? When I first started covering elections, especially in certain states, it was very difficult to speak to women voters and to get them to say anything substantive. Either they were shy or they were reluctant or they were not allowed to speak by the male members around them, or they didn't have enough awareness and agency, etc. So it was very difficult to get balanced news reports from the ground where you would have the voice of the woman as well. And often I saw that very conveniently, a lot of us as journalists also let that be, because we also realized that they were not dictating electoral outcomes, right? That was the belief. And men always gave better quotes. Men always made for better sound bites. So a lot of focus remained on men. But I think 2014 as a national, scenario kind of changed things because when the new government came in, there was a lot of conversation around women voters, and there were schemes that were quickly launched which specifically targeted women, and suddenly women became an important part of the electoral discourse. And I think slowly things start changing. I know 2019 marked a huge watershed moment with respect to numbers, because that's when the gender gap in voting turnout was, completely reversed, or at least completely bridged. But I think somewhere my inspiration for writing the book, I would tell you, came in, say, around 2017, 2018, because there were some important state elections that happened then. 2017 saw Uttar Pradesh at the beginning of the year. It saw Gujarat at the end of the year. 2018 had Tripura, which, that time was a very interesting election because it ousted a 3-decade-long left government and the BJP stormed to power. And then there were, of course, the year-end elections in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, etc. So in these elections, I thought that it's interesting to go to colleges and universities in both urban and rural and semi-urban areas to get a voice of the first-time voters, young voters, and see what they have to say. And I realized that the women in these colleges, in these universities, were far more vocal, were far more articulate, were far more clear in their thinking, and were far more specific in their thinking, right? And what they wanted. And that's when I realized something was changing, because it wasn't that women were, any more in the background or were reluctant to talk. At least this generation was very, very forthcoming. And they weren't forthcoming just for the sake of being forthcoming. They knew their minds, right? And they knew what mattered to them as women. And I saw that there was a thinking as women as well, right? They weren't just thinking as, voters of a certain community or any other identity. They were talking of voting preferences and voting desires and aspirations with respect to being women. I think somewhere down the line, that seeded an idea, maybe not about writing my book, but somewhere down the line, I knew this would be a book going forward, and this should be a book going forward. And when it came to writing a book, I thought, why not this?
Right. So two things you talked about, women in the earlier years, women not speaking much, or they are kind of, fearful of the men and all. Was it something which was more dominant in the rural areas, or was it there in the urban areas as well?
I think there are many distinctions one can make, right? I don't think it's just rural, urban. I think the state makes a lot of difference, right? For instance, women in Kerala were not as reluctant and not as, oppressed as women in Rajasthan
right.
Or Madhya Pradesh, somewhere in the interiors of Madhya Pradesh. So I think there are many divides, and this rural-urban divide doesn't really hold true so much anymore, because there is a lot of, India has changed, right? There is a lot of awareness. There's a lot of information that rural India has, which is the same information that urban India has, right? So I think the opportunities in rural India might be less, but the awareness and understanding in rural India is as much as urban
largely
India.
due to mobile internet penetration.
Yes, absolutely. Everybody has a smartphone. Everybody can see YouTube. Everybody has that information overload that even urban India has. So I don't think it was a rural-urban phenomenon as such. In fact, today, I think, and I say this very consciously, I think women in rural India, when you travel and to do election reportage, are far more willing to talk than women in urban India. There is a certain indifference that sometimes voters in urban India bring.
Right.
I wouldn't just say women, right? And I think voting percentages also reflect that. There is a rural-urban gap that happens. So I think with respect to women, it wasn't really whether the problem was more in rural areas or the problem was more in urban areas. I think it was more about social classes, and it was also more about the states and the region that one was talking about. But as a larger trend is what I mean, that it was difficult to get women to talk.
Yes.
And it was also not something that was given importance, as I said, by the media or even by politicians, because they thought, ये तो है. इनका तो वोट जो भी है, जिस साइड भी जाना है, वो जहाँ लोग मर्द वोट करेंगे, यही महिला वोटर वोट करेगी. That has changed. I think that's the story of the evolution of the woman voter.
So one thing in the first part of your book, you talked about the data, like you took data from various sources and you said how the gap is bridging. Earlier, lesser percentage of women voted. Now the gap is shrinking between women and men. More women are coming out to vote. What do you think that drove, in a sense, I said there is increased awareness, but what do you think, what are the key factors which brought this change? We know that now women are, more conscious about their identity as a voter as well as a woman. What exactly drove this change?
I think it's not something that happened overnight.
Right.
And it's important to remember that it's not something that happened overnight, right? It's not as if suddenly in 2019, women, the voter turnout gap was bridged because of what happened in 2019 or 2018 or 2017. It's something that's been happening for decades. It's a bottom-up push, and many factors have been responsible. Now, for instance, and I always give this, one of these as the main reasons, in the early 90s, we had these constitutional amendments that gave women empowerment and reservation at the local level, right? For local panchayats and urban local bodies. Somewhere down the line, we didn't realize the kind of difference it would make over the next 2 decades, because ground up empowerment, initially that system was mocked. People said that women were rubber stamps, sarpanch patis, etc. All of these things became popular, but gradually things were bound to change, because a woman, she might be a rubber stamp for once, twice, तीसरी बार तो जब आपके पास सत्ता है, आपको समझ आती है सत्ता की power, है ना? तो women gradually did start asserting themselves, and there are many examples of women sarpanches who were very powerful and who, really put forth the cause of women. That, in a way, at the grassroots sort of spread a little bit of message among other women that women can do this. And women are also a part of politics. Politics is not just a male domain. Women are there, right? And then that started triggering political interest in women. And when political interest started happening, electoral interest started happening. So that was one of the reasons. the SHG movement of the 90s, again, very important forum, very important platform, because SHG is a very safe spaces for women to exchange their views. There are no men who are judging you. It's mostly women based. They are economically independent when these SHGs, take off. They have financial empowerment. And these women were discussing politics. So a lot of these factors came together. Then, of course, there were many women-centric schemes that in their own way had an impact in encouraging women to come out and vote. Manrega, which now is called
Ji Ram
Ji. Yeah. That scheme, for instance, mandated 1/3 employment for women. And so many women, over 50% of Manrega workforce for many years comprised of women. And what happened with Manrega was that women got economic independence.
Yes.
When they got economic independence, they had more of a say in household decisions. That gave them more confidence. They started becoming a part of decision-making processes, and that gave them the power to come out and vote and decide on whom they want to vote for. Because 2006 is when Manrega came. In the 2009 election, you will see the gender gap halved from 8 points, whatever percent in the previous election to just 4 point something in this election. I don't remember the exact percentage point. And so, the percentage point reduction showed you that women were coming out to vote voluntarily. So, the real story of the evolution of the woman voter is not that she's going out to vote more. It's that she's going out voluntarily to vote more.
Right.
It's not necessarily a top-down approach.
Right.
Because if you see registered voters numbers, electors numbers, which is the number of women registered to vote, that has remained largely in the same bracket for many decades. If I'm not wrong, 46 to 48% bracket, right? What has changed dramatically is the turnout of women. So it's not as if, you're just adding more women to the list. It's that women already in the list are coming out to vote.
And voting.
And that is because they feel part of the process. They feel invested in the process. So schemes like Manrega, or later on schemes of the BJP government like Ujjwala, like rural housing, like the toilet scheme, etc. They gave women confidence that there was conversation around them, that they were important to the political and policy making class, and that obviously encouraged them to come out and vote and to see themselves as stakeholders in the process.
So one of the things, I think one thing is interesting is that India, when it became independent, first election held in 52, women were given the right to vote, and in fact it did not happen in many Western countries even. They gave this opportunity to women much later. In fact, I remember
women had to fight for it.
Yes. In Saudi Arabia, till some years ago, women were not even allowed to drive. So India did perform better definitely in that front. But yes, as you said, the percentage of women coming out to vote did increase. What are the key factors on which women vote? Because in India, we vote on the basis of caste or religion, freebies. There are many factors which influence. What are the key factors for women, and how do you see it's different when it comes to men? How they vote differently?
So women are not aliens. They are part of the society. They don't live in silos. We are all impacted by what's happening around us. The environment is the same for all of us. We interact with the environment in the same way. So I don't think women are completely insulated from questions of other identities like religion, caste, ethnicity, linguistic identity, or any other identity, right? They are also enmeshed in these identities. But the difference is, see, why are women voting more as women? It's because in every identity so far, women have always remained second to men, right? Even if you're a Hindu Brahmin woman, you're still next to men. You've never been treated the same as men.
Right.
Or if you're a Dalit woman, you're still second to men. Or if you're a Muslim woman, or if you're whoever, if you're from Assam, or if you're from Tamil Nadu, if you're from Rajasthan, you have always been treated by society, by the patriarchal mindset of the society as second to men. And that's a bonding factor for women across, right? Because all women, even if their other identities haven't been as marginalized, their identity as women has always been the marginalized identity. And which is why women vote more as women, increasingly now that they're getting the power, and they think more as women because they have been deprived of so many basics, of so many kinds of agency, of so many kinds of dignities that women vote on the basis of these, and which is why I constantly say that women are more rational as voters. Men have the bandwidth to not be rational, right? Because they have always got, by virtue of being men, they've got what they wanted. Women haven't. So women have to be more rational in their thinking as voters. They have to vote thinking of what would benefit them, what they can extract, and something that can improve their day-to-day life. So it's more of a bread and butter kind of an issue. Right, while men often think of more esoteric issues like national security and religion and patriotism and so on and so forth. I'm not saying these are not absolutes. Of course, there are men who vote on pragmatic decisions and there are women who vote.
There's a lot of overlap.
Of course, there are. I mean, these are not watertight compartments, but as a whole, as an average, women are turning out to be more rational voters purely on the basis of the fact that they have been deprived of so much, and they don't even have basics like toilets at home. Like, it's unfortunate that a woman has to vote thinking that, oh God, now I've got a toilet, so I must reward this party for giving me a toilet. Unfortunate that even today that's a conversation, but it is what it is. That's what's happening. That's the ground reality. Right. So women are more pragmatic, more rational, more transactional, I would say. And I mean it in a good way. I don't mean it in any bad way. I think voting should be a transactional process. I think there are people who think it should be a moral process, but I think it's a transactional process in whatever form.
Right. It has to be. It has
even
to be.
Even if you're voting based on ideology, you're voting because you believe the party you're voting for will cater to your ideology, right? So it is a transactional.
It is transactional, certainly.
So women are more transactional. Women are more, dare I say, intelligent as voters as compared to men. And, certain things stand out, right? Like they think more of the whole family, because women have been taught that family is a unit and that you are you're the caregiver of the whole family, which is why we have a Women and Child Development Ministry. I have no idea why these two ministries are clubbed, why women can't have a separate ministry, and why is it that men and child development don't go together. There is no logic to this, but that's a social conditioning. So women vote more keeping family as a unit in mind, कि हमारे बच्चों को क्या मिलेगा, हमारे पति को कहाँ नौकरी मिलेगी, कैसे हमारे बच्चे स्कूल कैसे जाएंगे, काम कहाँ मिलेगा, सरकारी नौकरी कहाँ मिलेगी, as compared to men who tend to put themselves first, instead of looking at the whole family as a unit.
So one of the things, as you mentioned, this thing started, you can say, women as a voter, started in South India at the time of Jayalalitha at MGR. They started with mixer grinders and all. And initially they were mocked at, but it gave electoral success. And Jayalalitha was the longest serving chief ministers. So can we say that started somewhat when the time started when women were being looked at more seriously? And do you think it's the national parties who understand the psyche of women better, or the regional parties?
So I don't think it's a national versus regional concept at all. I think you're right. I think the thought process came nationally only post 2014. Yeah. Or, to be fair, as I said, Manrega was an important scheme, but that had women as a subset. Yeah. Right? It wasn't targeted at women specifically. Right. So the conversation around women as a standalone, independent, important, influential unit started only after, say, the Modi government came to power, right? But that wasn't something that was, suddenly they thought of it without any precedence, right? Because it's already happened in states. So regionally, maybe because it was easier, because regions are more contained, states are more contained, right? National politics is a very different ballgame. MGR, NTR, of course, were the torchbearers of bringing women to the forefront of politics. And, all of these leaders, the beauty is that we only look at freebies, as it were, but all of these leaders brought in substantive measures for women. And I urge readers to read about what leaders like NTR and MGR have actually done. Whether it's bringing in reservations, whether it's bringing in more women into the party, that was a big focus point for these leaders. Yeah. Or even someone like Jayalalitha, we think of a mixer grinder or her saris, but we don't remember her many other schemes that were actually, catered at women to substantively improve their lives in a very tangible manner. Correct. So these leaders naturally thought of it ahead of their times. Maybe the societies were such in these states. But even otherwise, in the early 2000s, Nitish Kumar was a visionary in his own way when he came to power in 2005 for the first for his first full term. He understood that this was, he understood that his caste was going to give him a very small vote bank, right? It wasn't enough for him to win elections. And Bihar is, as we know, very caste-dominated state. He understood that women were an untapped constituency. And to be fair, we always ascribe it to electoral motives. But to be fair, he also started a scheme like the Bicycle Yojana, which was for non-voting people. It was for schoolgirls. They were not voting, right? So he thought of women as a social group that needed to be addressed. Let's put it that way. Forget about an electoral group, which converted to an electoral group which has stood by him through all all his turning from this side to that side and that side to this side, the women have not left Nitish Kumar's side.
Correct.
There were also leaders like Shivraj Singh Chauhan. He's underrated in this manner, but he was also very, very sharp about understanding women as voters and catering to them. And he did it in his own style. He has this very gentle demeanor and his very, quiet, silent way of doing things. But his Ladli Lakshmi and then later Ladli Behna Yojana, etc., have been replicated across states, which shows that how successful they were.
Right.
And it's easy to say this, they were successful in getting votes, but nobody gives you votes if it's not making a difference to their lives, right? So they were also successful in their social impact. Then, of course, then later we had Mamata Banerjee. And so we've had state leaders, and Narendra Modi himself in Gujarat did put women as an important aspect, a pillar of his politics. So states had already started doing it. Nationally, it became a story only recently, and which is why it's become a conversation recently.
So as you mentioned, untapped, voting base. If we see today, like there are a lot of improvements. I understand there are challenges. There are a lot of challenges, but there are improvements as well. In fact, I remember India got its first women IPS, IFS officer way back in 1970s. It got some politicians of stature. We got our first women prime minister in 1970s. And just to put it in perspective, America, as of now, does not have a woman president yet. Still, if you look at it today, because we are talking about voting and politics, women आज की, is it an enlightened voter? Is the women? और वो सिर्फ एक vote bank है, additional vote bank है, and doing for them, pays electoral dividends. इसलिए we are seeing a lot of focus on women.
नहीं, देखिए, जो नेता हैं और जो राजनीति में जो लोग हैं, वो अगर ऐसा देखते हैं कि महिला सिर्फ एक वोट बैंक है, तो जो ऐसा देखते हैं वो बहुत ज्यादा इस चीज को नहीं आगे ले जा पाएंगे. जो इनको एक पावरफुल इंटेलिजेंट सोशल ग्रुपिंग जैसे दिखता है, वो ही आगे जा पाएंगे. तो ये एग्जाम्पल मैं बता चुकी हूँ आपको, नीतीश कुमार, जयललिता वगैरह का. ये समझना जरूरी है कि कोई भी महिला सिर्फ कुछ मुफ्त में मिल रहा है इसीलिए वो मुफ्त में ले नहीं रही है, है ना. वो उनका जीवन कैसे सुधार रहा है वो देखकर वो उस चीज के लिए किसी को या तो रिवॉर्ड कर रही है या अगर नहीं मिल रहा है तो पनिश कर रही है. सो इट्स इम्पोर्टेंट टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट शी इज डिसर्निंग इनफ to know why something matters to her. If you treat her like a vote bank, that's fine. You treat everybody like a vote bank if you're a politician. But you can't treat her like an unenlightened vote bank anymore. And I think political parties are very, very aware of it. See, if you didn't need to target women separately, why would you have so many women-centric schemes? It was enough to talk about religion and national security and caste and all these other things that politicians have been talking about. आप किसान की बात कर सकते हो, आप युवा की बात कर सकते हो, आप महिला की क्यों कर रहे हैं? क्योंकि आप समझते हैं कि महिला सुन रही है, समझ रही है कि ये मेरे बारे में बात कर रहे हैं. they understand that there is a need to target women specifically. So I think I would say they are certainly enlightened and certainly far more enlightened and they have far more agency in their exercise of vote than they did a few decades ago.
तो एजेंसी की आपने जैसे बात करी, डेफिनेटली वुमेन हैव मच बेटर एजेंसी. बट व्हेन वी टॉक ऑफ इश्यूज ऑफ वुमेन, देयर आर मेनी, लाइक मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट जेंडर बायसेस which are there in the society. How do you think, and again in gender opportunities and everything, how do you think that will eventually help if they're having better access to, say, toilets or cooking gas and all? Do you think it will really solve the major problems women face? Because that is one aspect of enabling them. Is it really, are these freebies acting as an enabler so that we have really an equality when it comes to, say, women and men in the society?
So first of all, I don't look at schemes like the toilet scheme or the Ujjwala gas scheme or even cash transfers as freebies. I try to not use that word. They are welfare measures, right? Let's look at them as welfare initiatives. Why is a toilet scheme important? Because it brings safety, it brings dignity to women, right? Okay. Women had to go to the fields at odd hours to relieve themselves. There was no dignity to that. There was no safety in that. There was no convenience in that. This is one thing that at some level can bring her at par with the men in her house, right? Why is the Ujjwala gas scheme important? Look, we often sit and say, तो गैस सिलेंडर दे दिया. गैस सिलेंडर नहीं दिया है आपने महिला को बहुत बड़ी सुविधा दी है. क्योंकि जो ग्रामीण महिला थी वो मीलों चल के जाती थी अपने लिए कोयला या जो भी लकड़ी का साधन कहीं से जुगाड़ के लाती थी. उससे वो बहुत टाइम वेस्ट होता था, बहुत मेहनत जाती थी, उसके बाद जो उसका धुआं निकलता था उनके बच्चों के लिए, उनके सेहत के लिए, वो बहुत हानिकारक था. सो यू हैव गिवन women a lot of convenience with this. You know, it's easy. If we come from a position of privilege, we can easily dismiss these things as, you know, आपने तो एक गैस दे दी,
इसमें कोई बड़ी बात नहीं है,
आपने गैस दे दी, आपने एक टॉयलेट दे दी. जब आपके पास वो प्रिविलेज नहीं
होता,
तब आप समझेंगे कि कितनी बड़ी चीज है और ये क्यों बड़ी चीज है. So these things are, unfortunately, now see, that should not have been the starting point. You're right about that, right? Why are we still talking of these basics? But unfortunately, these did not exist. So you have to start from these very, very basic measures. Do they address inequalities? Yes, they do start addressing inequalities to a great extent. Like when अगर उज्ज्वला की मदद से एक महिला के पास टाइम बचता है, एनर्जी बचती है, सेहत ठीक रहती है, तो वो मनरेगा में काम कर सकती है, अपना पैसा कमा सकती है, या फिर वो अपने जो कैश ट्रांसफर आ रहा है उससे कुछ छोटा मोटा अपना बिजनेस स्टार्ट कर सकती है, पैसे कमा सकती है. अगर महिला के पास टॉयलेट है तो वो सुरक्षित महसूस कर सकती है. These things do create some level of equality. The inequality in mindset of society is not something that can change overnight, right? And that no political party can change. We shouldn't even expect political parties to do it. It's social conditioning that has been so ingrained for centuries that it can't happen overnight. But these are small measures that were needed and that are important.
Can act as enablers too.
Yes, absolutely.
So whatever we have discussed, especially Manrega, which you can say started, you know, getting women into, you know, workforce and all. So one of the criticism from solely an economic point of view, not from a gender point of view, is that Manrega, one of the drawbacks was that there was no capital formation. So basically giving people money for doing very sundry tasks, something which does not add value. तो आप economy को long run में उससे भला नहीं होता जितना एक अगर आप फिक्स्ड कैपिटल फॉर्मेशन करने से मुझे मेकिंग हाईवेज और बिल्डिंग्स एंड
नहीं. अब आपको मैं एक चीज समझाऊं, मनरेगा की क्या खूबी थी. आप ये चीज कहना आसान है, लेकिन मनरेगा में आप लेबर इंटेंसिव ही रह सकते हैं, वरना आप एम्प्लॉयमेंट कैसे प्रोवाइड करेंगे. द लेबर मटेरियल कॉस्ट वाज डिफाइंड इन मनरेगा टू फेवर लेबर. इट हैड टू बी. अगर आप हाईवेज बिल्ड करने लगेंगे तो आपको तो मशीनें लानी पड़ेगी, आप लोगों से तो नहीं करा सकते, तो आप एम्प्लॉयमेंट कैसे देंगे. इसीलिए मनरेगा का ऑब्जेक्टिव ही ये था कि आप लेबर इंटेंसिव काम कराएं. और इनिशियली ये क्रिटिसिज्म बिल्कुल थी कि आप एक कुआं खोदे जा रहे हैं, फिर वही कुआं खोदे जा रहे हैं वही. लेकिन उसके बाद जब इन्होंने बाकी स्कीम्स के साथ इसको टाई अप करना शुरू किया, जैसे आपने ग्राम सड़क योजना के साथ करना शुरू किया, तो उसमें आपने लोगों को डाला, या आपने आजीविका के साथ इसको वो करना शुरू किया, तो बहुत योजनाओं के साथ जब इसको टाई अप किया तो इससे काफी हद तक काम हुआ है. और हर चीज ऐसी नहीं हो सकती कि आपको बड़ी बड़ी बिल्डिंगें दिख जाएं या आपको हाईवेज दिख जाएं, है ना. नरेगा का पर्पस ही था लेबर इंटेंसिव होना. तो लोग उस टाइम भी कहते थे कि बड़े बड़े हाईवे क्यों नहीं बना रहे हैं, तो फिर लेबर कहाँ से मतलब हाउ विल यू. द पॉइंट इज ऑल्सो वी फॉरगेट नरेगा इज नॉट एन एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेशन स्कीम. इट्स अ डिस्ट्रेस स्कीम, right? It's for those in distress who don't have any other form of employment, and that's why it suited women the most, because women could not go to cities to work. अगर महिला है तो आपको तो कोई अलाउ नहीं करेगा कि आप शहर में जाके काम करें. आप कर भी नहीं सकते हो, आपको बच्चे संभालने, आपको घर संभालना है, आपको अपनी खेती देखनी है. तो ऐसी महिला डिस्ट्रेस्ड थी, उनके लिए ये स्कीम बिल्कुल टारगेटेड थी. तो इसीलिए मुझे लगता है कि क्रिटिसिज्म जो होती है ना, ये इकोनॉमिक पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से अपनी जगह है, लेकिन इनके जो सोशल इफेक्ट्स है ना, आप चाहे उनको टेंजिबल तरह ना भी देख पाए, वो बहुत है. और ये कोविड के टाइम पे सबको पता है नरेगा कितना काम आई है टू गिव पीपल सम बेसिक सब्सिस्टेंस, राइट. सो द पर्पस ऑफ नरेगा वाज नॉट टू क्रिएट बिग एसेट्स. नरेगा का एसेट क्रिएशन स्कीम नहीं थी, वो डिस्ट्रेस सेफ्टी नेट स्कीम थी. या
बट बिकॉज मैनी इकोनॉमिस्ट से कि इसको आप क्लब कर सकते, जैसा कि अब हो रहा है लिंकिंग टू द ग्राम सड़क योजना एंड ऑल, सो दैट यू कैन डू बोथ, बिकॉज that will after a time will put some stress on the fiscal resources. So I remember when in Delhi especially the Kejriwal launched schemes of 2,000 rupees per month, there also questions were being raised that there is a limit up to which you can do this. You have to empower people eventually so that they can.
लेकिन ये देखिए, ये हम जब गरीबों के लिए होता है तभी क्यों सवाल करते हैं. जब मिडिल क्लास को तो हमेशा पेट्रोल पे सब्सिडी चाहिए, डीजल पे सब्सिडी चाहिए.
So that in a way society is
मुझे हमेशा ये लगता है कि भाई गरीबों के लिए कुछ होता है तो इसको हमेशा देखते हैं कि तो फ्री भी हो गई है, ये तो डोल दे रहे हैं, we are just giving them doles, we are just giving them freebies. But when it comes to the others, You want tax concessions.
Right.
You want tax cuts. The rich want tax cuts. They don't want this to be taxed, that to be taxed. But when it comes to the poor, just because you see it tangibly being given,
yes,
you suddenly start
We
feeling
start
this is
raising,
fiscally
right.
not prudent.
Not prudent. No, that's a valid point actually. One of the things is now we have, whether freebies or things such as toilets and everything. But there is a limit in the sense once everyone has a toilet or a pakka house and everything, you can say the basic necessities. What is the phase after that? And if they see that every political party is ready to do, every political party announces they will give 2,000 rupees or 1,000 rupees for build
Right.
toilets. What will change after 15, 20 years? How will a political party differentiate themselves? And secondly, what will women want after having met the basic necessities and rising up in the social ladder as well because they're getting an agency? What do you think will be the scenario after 15 or 20 years? What will be the issues then?
Right. So, you're right. The woman vote is not a stagnant vote, right? And it's actually going to evolve faster than the male vote because of the base effect, right?
Right.
Itni dinon se wo stagnant tha, suddenly it has shot up. So the evolution will also be a sharp rise now.
Yeah.
It'll be like a sharp curve,
Right.
right? The graph will be quite steep. You're right, gas मिल गई आपको आप ग्रामीण घर मिल गया है आपको टॉयलेट मिल गया है, कैश ट्रांसफर्स मिल रहे हैं, so you're using it for your starting small businesses or some employment opportunities, whatever you're doing with it. But there will be a limitation to that.
Yes.
And this has also been an evolution in a way, right? These things have also not come up overnight. It's been an evolution in thinking कि ये देना चाहिए. So the next one big thing that political parties will have to provide for and will have to solve for is employment. क्योंकि हर महिला का ये रहता है कि रोजगार, आप रोजगार दो. And it's very clear from how they're using the cash transfers. They're using it for rozgar. Most women either start कुछ छोटा सा एक आपने tailoring boutique start कर दी, you've started a beauty parlor or a vegetable kiosk, or you've started a chai stall, snack stall, छोला भटूरा, कुछ भी आपने stall start की है क्योंकि आपको उससे sustainable livelihood मिल सकती है. So the next big question women are already asking is livelihood, and political parties will have to solve for that, and it can't be done in a very casual manner कि इस सेक्टर में हम थोड़ा women को देख लेंगे, उसमें देख लेंगे. आपको targeted करना पड़ेगा इसको. आपको ऐसी योजनाएं लॉन्च करनी पड़ेगी which can enable women to get more jobs and can enable women to start. So maybe easier loans. I think that already happens with all these mudra and all of that, but easier loans for women to start something, and more specifically easier employment opportunities. And the other question women are likely to ask, I think, which I think right now is going under the radar because as you said, basics ही नहीं थे.
Right.
Is the question of more women in politics, right? We are still very, very, it's a very dismal situation even today. I think current Lok Sabha has 14 point something percentage of women MPs. I'm not sure of the exact figure, but I think that it should be around that much. And that shows the kind of hypocrisy क्योंकि आप pursue कर रहे हैं महिला वोटर को, लेकिन आप importance और power नहीं दे रहे हैं महिला नेता को. Right? Now, so far, there has been no correlation between the gender of leaders and women's preference. They've liked Nitish Kumar, they've liked Narendra Modi, they've liked MGR, NTR, and they've liked Mamata Banerjee, not just because she's a woman, but because she's catering to them. So it's not been about gender. But women are going to start questioning the lack of women in top positions, in policy making, in politics. And that's going to be a question going forward. And मुझे लगता है कहीं ना कहीं क्योंकि भाजपा काफी तेज है as a political party और काफी नब्ज उनको पता लगती है मतदाता की, तभी इतने चुनाव जीतती है. कहीं ना कहीं वो ये समझे हैं, तभी उन्होंने पुश कर दिया है ये वुमेन रिजर्वेशन बिल, ताकि कल को महिला सवाल अगर ये पूछे कि आप महिलाओं को क्यों नहीं लाते हैं पॉलिटिक्स में, वो क्विकली बोल देंगे ये तो बहुत डेकेड से पड़ा हुआ था, दिस बिल वाज लाइंग, नोबडी वाज पुशिंग इट, कांग्रेस केम, थर्ड फ्रंट गवर्नमेंट केम, नोबडी डिड एनीथिंग अबाउट दिस बिल, बट वी ब्रॉट दिस, राइट? सो आई थिंक दे नो, दे हैव एन आंसर रेडी. So, but political parties also have to do it more tangibly, like Mamata Banerjee does it, right? She makes women contest, and she makes women contest from important seats. Now, that is one bias that otherwise political parties have कि अब ऐसी सीट से जहाँ से हारेंगी तो कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा, हमारे लिए important seat नहीं है. So, other parties also have to start showing that intent of empowering women internally within their structures.
Right. So here there's an important question. We see now many more women becoming, say, chartered accountants, over 30%. When we in IAS, even IPS, IFS, women doing very well in sports, in MNCs, everywhere. I know there is still a gender gap, but yes, things are increasing. Why you think it's still not happened in Parliament? Why is the proportion still, as you mentioned, about 15%, which is very low? Why you think Parliament remained to an extent an exception?
Because politics is still seen as largely a male domain, right? Rajniti gandi hai, औरतों के लिए नहीं है.
Right.
That thinking still remains to a great extent in our society, in families. And one is that, and the second thing is that are political parties, are the top leaderships of political parties genuinely doing enough to encourage more women, to provide safe spaces, to provide, in whatever to be able to give women important positions of power, to give them tickets? Are you doing that? How many women are you actually rising up the ranks? Are you allowing them to rise up the ranks? So I think both these things are social conditioning, plus the sort of reluctance from political parties to genuinely bring women up in their ranks.
Right. But I think in local bodies, as Abne mentioned, in local bodies there have been reservation. So Parliament talked about 33% women reservation bill, but that has not happened yet.
Usme to tha. It'll take some time.
So you, as a woman, as a voter, you are confident it will happen over time, maybe in next.
See, I think it might follow the same trajectory that reservation at the lower levels did, right? Where it was said कि अरे ये तो rubber stamp है, right? She's it's because the man behind her wants to retain power, that because it's a reserved seat, so he's put his wife or he's put his daughter. But it's going to be an evolution. It's going to be a phase. There will come a time, just as it came at the local level, that women even in these things, they will say, no, we are in power. Right? And they will take charge and they will take stock of the situation and they will genuinely become empowered. So that is bound to happen.
But don't you think ideally this should give a chance to more women, those who do not have a political backing? Because that is a valid question कि आप सिर्फ इसलिए आ रहे हो because you have a political backing.
But वो सिर्फ women के लिए क्यों है? वो तो men के लिए भी true है ना? But वो देखिए अब उसमें और बहुत चीजें, that's another can of worms that one can open, right? There is a problem with nepotism and dynasty in politics, but there is also something to be said कि वरना तो युवा आना ही नहीं चाहता,
right?
Correct. आप देखिए CPM, CPI वगैरह का ऐसा हाल क्यों है? There are no young people wanting to join. It's not just about the ideology; it's also about not wanting to join, right? Because there is no dynasty, there's nobody, So I think both things these are very complex issues, right? It's you can't just say, just because a woman is from a political party, should it mean that she shouldn't be allowed to?
Of course.
Right? She may have far more political acumen than the men in her family.
Right.
But yes, if it's about encouraging people from non-political parties, that should happen for both men and women.
Both men and
women.
Right?
It's not just in politics. We are a society of nepotism.
Right.
Right, the film industry is the best example. It's not my place to talk about it, but as a viewer, I can. It's the best example of the worst kind of nepotism, right? So, आप उस चीज को address करना बहुत societal change है, right? But let's not limit that to women, and let's not put the onus only on women.
Of course not.
Women from political parties should not be given, because then men also should not be given, right? So,
but we have a PM who, whether you agree with him or not, but he rose through the ranks. He came from a humble background without any, political backing, so to speak. And there are many examples in the current ruling party. Once again, whether you agree or disagree with their politics, but there are many people who rose from the ranks without any political backing. So I think that is, and I agree that it should happen with both men and women. In fact, people now question this, that what have you done on your own? You are some politician's son or IAS son, but they prefer people, whether it's men or women, that those who rose through the ranks through their sheer hard work.
Right.
And I agree. Gender should be secondary. It's basically the perspective, the person's own hard work and ability, which should be the dominant factor.
Right.
So we end this podcast on the hope that yes, women's reservation bill passes through. We do
it has passed.
It has passed, but it gets implemented.
Yes.
And we do see a larger participation of women. Just as I said, we are seeing more IS, IPS as women, more sports person bringing medals. Why not more women in parliament? All those who are watching, I would say this is a very, not just interesting, but a very important book to be read. It's one of a kind of book. Politics is our favorite topic, but talking about women, what's their role in politics? What are their aspirations? Not many have talked about this. And this is one book which I strongly recommend to all of you who have an interest in politics or in women's issues. Ruhi, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much. My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.